Thank you guys for tuning into True Grit Podcast. I'm your host over here, as I am every week, Matt. With us on the podcast today, we actually have the privilege of having Angela Douglas with us. Angela is a keynote speaker and also does guest facilitation at one of the Midwest recovery facilities over here. Actually, multiple facilities that you go and do it at. So we really appreciate you coming and speaking with our clients. And also just being like a general beacon of positivity and hope. From what I hear, I haven't personally been able to have the privilege to be in one of your groups, but I hear nothing but really good things about them. So I truly appreciate you for being here and helping out with those things. But I guess in your own words, why don't you tell us a little bit about, who you are, how you ended up being where you are right now as far as the facility goes, and what you're kind of looking to accomplish for Angela Douglas.
Thanks, Matt. It's nice to be here. So I am from Toledo. I was born and raised here. I have always really been interested in self-development. It's actually something that started back in my early 20s. And at the time, I was just going through, as 20-year-olds do, their own waves of ups and downs. And
it's not a phase.
It's not a phase. And it became one of those things that kind of became a lighthouse for me. And what I started to do is I started just to lean into it. And one of the things that I always tell the clients is I always ask them, does anyone in here feel like they're meant for more? Because I always had a feeling that I was meant for more. I had a feeling that there was something else out there for me, something greater. And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to get there. I didn't know what it looked like. But I think one of the things that I consistently tell the clients is if you feel like that, you have to chase it. Don't push it away. Don't push it away by, ignoring it or acting like it's not there. Chase it. Find out what it is. Because eventually it'll reveal itself. And I think eventually it revealed itself to me. It's taken me almost 20 years to figure it out. And I used to be a teacher. I lived in Hong Kong for 11 years. I had left Toledo because I was running in some of the same circles that some of our clients are running in now. And I just found that I knew there was more for me. I didn't know what it looked like, but I wanted more. And so I left. I went to Hong Kong. I ended up teaching there for 11 years. And I just continued on with my positivity and the things that I love to learn, the self-development, inspiration, motivation, role model mindset. And when I came back to Toledo, I left Hong Kong in July, August 2023. And I came back to Toledo and I really wanted to be a public speaker. I was like, I just want to share my message because I know that the things that I've learned have helped me and I just want to help other people. And it was actually one of the people from Midwest who had reached out to me and asked me if I would come and speak to our clients. And here we are.
And here we are, full circle. Wow. So what, I guess as far as that goes, I know someone had reached out to you and asked you to come and be with us to help speak with the clients, but what kind of inspires you to be a motivational speaker to this specific demographic of person once it comes to people that suffer from addiction and alcoholism?
I think that because I know, first of all, personally, I've lost quite a lot of friends, and I've had my own experiences with addiction, and I have friends who are in recovery many years now, and it's just amazing to me that people do recover. This is a journey. It's not the end of their story, and I want to inspire them that if they believe that there's more out there for them, it definitely is.
Yeah, just to put that, like you said, be that lighthouse a lot of the times, or to be able to shine that light on a certain aspect of someone and kind of almost reinforce them chasing their dreams or becoming the person that they can be.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like that guide on the side.
Totally.
Just saying, hey, you can do it.
Yeah.
You can kill it.
Yeah.
You and Noodle running around the building kind of hanging out.
I actually thought about bringing Noodle. So
you should have. That would have been great. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Noodle, who he is?
Noodle is my best friend. He is a little cavapoo, and He's just a really sweet and gentle boy, and the clients just are so drawn to him. And sometimes they'll tell me, like, if I don't bring Noodle, they're like, you can leave. They literally will say to me, like, oh, Miss Angela, you didn't bring Noodle today. And they're sad about it. So I try to bring him all the time because I can see that he's a light in their lives. And I know that some of them have had pets or have pets and are missing their pets and their children as well. And I think that Noodle kind of like is a little like gateway to that, you know, to give them just a little bit of like love and energy.
Yeah, that's what I always see. It's almost like he's a physical embodiment of like spirit and hope running around the building. It's crazy to literally see him moving around the facility, and when, you know, clients and not even just clients, but like staff in general, to see him just kind of running around doing his thing, hanging out, like people smile. It literally is just a big smile that comes across people's faces when they see him. And it's crazy to me how like small things like that, especially within, you know, our demographic and where we are, like little small things are what's most important. You know, like it literally can be the fact that like, hey, there's a cute dog running across the hallway or the room that can change your whole day in perspective on things.
It makes them smile. Yeah, it lights them up.
Like it's almost just like a cognitive reframe in a quick second.
In a quick second.
Then it comes right across, you know?
Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, it's great to have him and to have you here as well.
Thank you.
So thank you again with that.
Absolutely.
Question I have for you with that as well, though, is so what do you feel? I know that you said that you wanted to change your life and you wanted to be a motivational speaker and do keynote speaking. Was there a certain point or reasoning that kind of flipped that light for you as far as wanting to change and be that change that you want to see? Was there a specific factor or instance that you can think of that kind of broadened your horizons about the possibility of what can be?
Of course. So many years ago, I had actually written something on Facebook bashing a girl who was a former friend of mine. And this is really the story that really turned it all around for me. It was at the time when, like, you know, Facebook just wasn't in your hand. I had to like go back home to log into Facebook. And I remember that particular instance, people were like cheering me on and they were, oh my gosh, you're so funny, like get her, you know, they were really, they were kind of cheering on the fact that I was being a bad person.
Sure.
Or that I was not, maybe not being a bad person, but kind of just dragging someone through the dirt. And I thought to myself, you have a small shred of influence over these people in Toledo, Ohio. Imagine what you could do if you took that and made it bigger or made it more or just shared your message. And so what I started to do is I just started to share my positive messages, and people do look for them. They're like that little light of hope, you know? And I think that I just realized that if I don't do it, who is going to be the role model for these people? Who is going to be that light? Who else is going to do it?
No, I mean, absolutely. It's something that has to be done. And especially in, excuse me, I feel like in today's world, people have such a tendency to stew on negative things.
Totally.
You know, and have that tense, or not that tense, but like that friction between two things and live in it and stew in it. You know, where it's like, if you could take that opportunity and kind of recenter and refocus those ideas,
can change your life.
Feel so much better. It'll change your life. It'll make you feel better. And everybody knows the proverbial, you know, water cooler chats, where most of the time they sit around and, you know, they're going to BS about the weather or this or that, or, you know, my boss is this or my boss is that, where people have a tendency to focus on negativity. I've noticed more so than positivity, but it breeds. You know, so being able to be that positive light or change and be able to show that to other people, it's contagious.
It is.
You know, when you start that and when you continue to move that along, it's almost like when you see a train get going. You know, when it's starting off, it's slow and it might be a little trudging, but eventually through time, when you remain positive and you stay focused on that goal, positivity radiates more positivity.
Absolutely.
Negativity
breeds negativity.
And that's no fun.
It is no fun.
You know, at the end of the day, who wants to sit around and stew and have a bad time?
Of course.
You know, I always tell people, you know, I got sober a little over 5.5 years ago now, and I tell our clients all the time, like, excuse my language, but I sure as hell didn't get sober to be in a bad mood all the time.
Correct.
You know, like those were the things that kept me in active addiction and doing negative things. Like, why not? You know, we're not going to be on this world for a long time. So while we're here in this world, we better have a good time. And while we're alive, we better live.
Absolutely. Yesterday, I was actually teaching on beliefs and identity. And I was discussing with the clients these exact ideas, you know, like what are the beliefs that we're putting into our mind by thinking the way that we're thinking, right? And how does that shape our identity? Are you somebody who's angry all the time? Like, that's a heavy weight to carry. It's heavy to be angry all the time. It does not serve you. It does not serve you. And I wish more people understood that and knew that. And sometimes I find that Toledo can be a harsh place to be because sometimes people are super negative. So that is one of the reasons why I wanted to come back here and do what I do. So I could kind of bring that light and hopefully inspire people. And one of the things I also encourage our clients to do all the time is encourage other people in their process. Lift them up. Celebrate their wins, even if it's something really small or seemingly meaningless to you. It goes a long way.
Yeah.
It goes a really
small gestures. A little bit to build upon and build upon and build upon. So how do you think working in this field specifically, since you started over here working in the recovery space, how do you feel that the field's impacted your own perspective on life?
I would say it's definitely opened me up to knowing more people who are addicts. The more that you get close to them, you know what I've realized is that so many of them have such incredible hearts, like huge hearts. They are people who are incredibly emotionally, they're in tune. They're very aware of a lot. They're incredibly intelligent. Some of them are so intelligent, and I'm just like, you are so smart. And you have a beautiful heart, and you have a great personality, and you're charismatic. Like, some of them are so incredibly powerful, and I feel like sometimes they fail to recognize their own power, or they give it away, or they push it away, or, you know, they're not using it in the way that they could use it. I feel like there are so many of them that I look at, and I see the same qualities in my friends who are in recovery, who have amazing careers and amazing lives, and are doing things for the city and changing the landscape of what it looks like for addicts. So I think that I've learned that, you know, you really just can't judge a book by its cover. You can't look at somebody and assume that because they've done drugs that they're somebody who can't function or isn't worth something, and I think that so many people kind of have that association. They're just like, oh, I don't want to deal with that, or I don't want to think about that. And some of these people are just so incredibly powerful, and working with them it's fun, it's enjoyable. We share a lot of laughs. We also share a lot of tears. That's one of my favorite things, making grown men cry. In a good way. Just helping them tap into things that they've been ignoring and looking at life from a different perspective, you know, thinking about their families and what they want to do and where they want to be. It's amazing.
No, that's very cool. So with you being new to, you know, I mean, this field in general within the last few months, were there any sort of challenges or hurdles that you felt in the beginning once it came to being able to be connected with individuals there? Like, did you ever feel, because I know, like, as a person in recovery, a lot of the times it's easier for us to have our clients or patients, whatever you want to say, relate to us because they say, oh, well, they've been where I've been, so I get it and I understand. Like, was that a hurdle for you? And if it was, how are you able to connect and break down those barriers with these individuals?
So there are kind of two parts to that. Definitely, one is that sometimes our clients are very shut down because you know, they're coming off of whatever their drug of choice is. They're coming off of that and they're not ready. A lot of them are not ready yet for some of the information. They're not ready yet, and that takes time. So one of the things that I really have found a bit of a challenge with is like being patient in that, and knowing that, like, maybe this is just the beginning of their journey and they need a little more like love and like gentle guidance, because I've seen some of them make huge and massive turnarounds and they're just totally different people in a few weeks from now, you know? And the second part of that is that I always tell them that I know that I haven't been through what you've been through, but the reality is you can say things like, oh, I can't learn from somebody who hasn't been through what I've been through,
Right.
but I can learn things from a 5-year-old. You know, some kids are incredibly smart and perceptive. And actually yesterday, like I said, we're teaching the beliefs. There's a video that I showed and it's a little boy and he was talking to his mom and he was like, you can do whatever you want. You could get singing lessons, you can get a better job. He said, you can even be like rich. You can live in the White House. And she said, who, me? And he said, yeah, do what you want to do. It's not up to other people. It's up to you. And even that little video, I showed that clip and all of them were like, oh my gosh. They were just so impressed by that little boy. And it's one of my favorite videos because it really goes to show like you can learn from anyone. You just have to be willing and open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there are things that I can teach you that maybe other people who have been through addiction can't teach you, right? I don't know how better to explain that other than to say that, you know, you have to be open to it.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's a really good example of that as well. I'm just curious how, you know, that translates with the, you know, I mean, just coming into it, you know, with not having maybe the life experience that people say and how welcoming they were with it.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, you coming in as someone that maybe not have experienced this type of situation before, were there any sort of common misconceptions or prejudices or biases that you may not necessarily have had yourself, but you had heard people say before, that once you got here and into it, you thought and realized like, hey, you know, this isn't correct?
Good question. I think that there's always going to be some kind of like bias, especially when people haven't worked in the field, or they don't know what it's like to, you know, have a family member in addiction or something. Not everyone, you know, can understand. So I think just being compassionate, I think, is really important because you just don't know people's journey. You know, I think what's most interesting as well is like when working with the clients and like when you hear their stories, like some of the things you hear, you think like, wow, now I know why you've had such a rough time. Like you've struggled with something that most people have no idea what you're going through. And I think being willing to listen is really important. But I think there are a lot of biases. I think that we all have inherent biases, and I do think it's important that we work on those. It's important that we look at ourselves and ask, like, why do we have those biases and where do they come from? Like, why do I think that way? Or what is the, you know, the underlying issue as to why I feel that way? But I think overall, like I said, being compassionate is super, super important, no matter what.
So I mean, that compassion, it almost kind of like segues into, you know, the next question I was thinking about. You know, just getting your thoughts about with those things as well. Is how do you feel our community in general could work together to break down cultural biases once it comes to this specific addiction demographic? Like I always refer back to, you know, I had watched a TED Talk by a gentleman. His name's Johan Hari. He's
oh, I know who that is. Oh, yes.
I know that.
I know who that is.
Where he
and I've read
speaks
his
of
book and heard that TED Talk.
right, the connection involved in things and sitting with someone. So how do you feel about the whole nurturing aspect of that, since you kind of are already familiar with the topic, and how nurturing and sitting with someone, despite cultural bias, can have a large impact on understanding?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know, I mean, you imagine, first of all, as humans, we are not made to be alone. We are not made to be alone. We weren't meant to be alone. So I think that the aspect of community is so important. And
nurturing someone, it's like a child, right? Like, and another thing that is very common within addiction, I think that one thing that people have to recognize, that drugs, alcohol will stunt growth, will stunt their growth. So it causes them to have arrested development. So some of them, you know, you may meet somebody who's 60 years old who really is the age of like a 15-year-old because they've been using drugs for so long that they haven't had the same experiences that other people have had without drugs and alcohol, right? And I think that, you know, a lot of our clients, like, they just want to be seen. They just want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want someone to recognize them.
As people.
As people. And it's just so amazing because as I've worked in this field for, just a few months, like, I've noticed, gosh, people just really, they want that connection. They want that connection. They want you to see them. They want you to recognize them. They want you to honor them. And like, you know, as, like I said, a 60-year-old man who's maybe acting like a 15-year-old boy, you know, sometimes they just want that recognition of like, you're doing a really good job. You know, you're doing better than you think. And that's why I think that the community work is so important. So not only is it important the work that we do like within the classrooms, but making sure that we provide things outside of the Monday to Sunday or Monday to Friday classes for them, but like giving them something to do, giving them different activities, ideas, opportunities to show their strengths, to grow, to change. Because a lot of them are doing things for the first time, which can be really frustrating for them. You know, I had a lady who, and she's super sweet. She's like one of my favorite people. And she was saying to me, she's like, it's really frustrating to me. She's like, I've never really used a phone and I don't really know how to do stuff. And now like everything is switching to online. It's switching to like digital things and I have to download apps and do these things online. And it's really frustrating for me. And, you know, people just don't know the struggles that some of the addicts go through. So I think like that nurturing, being patient, like being willing to sit and like speak to them and not brush them off or not act like what they're going through isn't a big deal. Because for each individual person, their own things are a big deal to them.
Right.
You
never know what someone else has experienced in the past with
Really
those things either. Or even a lot of the thing that strikes me is they might not have ever had the opportunity to learn these things or to see these things a lot of the time, because I used to run into it a lot when I was working as a housing director for the company, is a lot of people just based off of their past socioeconomic status and upbringing were never exposed to what you or I or someone else may think are the simple things in life.
Yes.
You know, when I say the simple things in life, it can be anywhere from, you know, emotional simple things where it's like how to care for someone.
Or how to respond to conflict.
Exactly. Or simple things in a physical aspect where it's, you know, how do I cook for myself?
Yeah. How do I cook and clean up? How do I respect the space?
Yeah, if you ask my wife, I still haven't figured out the second half of that. I can cook a little bit. Like I make a mean spaghetti. I tell myself I make the world's most famous spaghetti.
I love that.
But the second part, the whole cleaning up part of it, yeah, I'm getting there. It's progress. Progress, not perfection, like they always say in the program.
Yeah.
Be the living embodiment of it now. So what, as far as that stuff goes too as well, like how does Angela Douglas help individuals that you're able to sit and speak with find their purpose or find their talent? Like you said that you like to try and highlight people and encourage them to do those things.
One of the things that I always focus on is finding our values. Because I do believe that it's so interesting when we do values. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I want loyalty, I want respect. But what does that mean to them? Why is that important to you? And then I do this exercise. So I give them a list of 230 values. I ask them to underline 20. After they get the first 20, I ask them to cut it down to 10
And then I ask them to cut it down to 5 and make those their core 5 values.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when you know your values, you start to know more of who you are. And it helps you, it's something that really genuinely helps you to like, our values are like the banks of the river,
Right.
right? They keep the water inside.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are somebody who genuinely values respect, people who disrespect you are on the outside of the river. They can't come down the river with you, right? So how can you honor more of that in your life? And how can you start to create your life around that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's just one of the things I do with them. We do a lot of deep diving. We try to, a lot of times with the clients, I try to allow them all to, learn at the same time, but do things that are individually
Right.
important to their development and like what they're seeking to find. Because I think a lot of times too, what I've seen, I always try to find out, what is the reason that people, like what is the reason that our clients are addicted, or like what is the, and I think for a lot of them, I think for a majority of them, there's a deep sense of worthlessness. And so I try to focus on things that make them feel worthy, I think that's really important, helping them feel worthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask too, like, I know that you had brought up, I think the values is a very important thing to set a foundation that you can build upon with that. Do you find that there are specific core values that seem to correlate most often between individuals? Or is everybody kind of usually a little bit, I mean, I know you said there were 200 plus of them, so obviously that's a lot of values to go by.
Yeah.
But I was just wondering, like, if, because I always think about, like, when we're sitting here and we're doing these talks and things that, like, what is one thing that somebody that is watching or listening right now that may be struggling could pick up on and could hold on to, that they could say, hey, Angela deals with, I shouldn't say deals with, but Angela is around hundreds of clients that are struggling. Is there a common thread that you have seen amongst those struggling once it comes to core values that maybe someone out there listening right now might say, you know what, maybe one of those could be a building block for me to start? Or even if there's just more than one that's common that people could use as a starting place?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's interesting because when you do the values exercises, I always ask all the clients to read theirs and share. And it's interesting because everyone's are so different. Everyone's are so different. But a lot of the main ones I would say are family. Family's a big one. Respect is a big one. Communication also is a big one. I think ultimately the one thread that I think connects everyone though is their desire for change. And I think that's really important, is that they all desire change. I think they deeply want change. They desire change. And one of the things that I also always say, it doesn't matter how much your mom loves you or how much she cries. It doesn't matter how much your kids cry. It does not matter how much your friends care. It doesn't matter how much your family cares. You are not done until you're done. And you have to make the decision. No one else can make that decision for you. It doesn't matter how much I love you. It doesn't matter how much I care. It doesn't matter how much I pour into this. And sometimes it takes 5, 8, 13 times in rehab for people to get the message. And I think a lot of that as well has to do with the fact that there is developing emotional maturity, right? Like it's very difficult to have a high emotional intelligence when you leave rehab in the very beginning, because the very beginning there's a lot of things that are going to test your patience. There's a lot of things that are going to try you in terms of like the desire, if you want it bad enough. And that's why people leave, is because they're not ready. And I think that we have to give those people grace. I think there's nothing to be ashamed of about coming back more than once. I think or more than however many times it takes, I think it's really important that eventually you get there. That eventually you're gentle enough with yourself to say like, okay, I'm gonna try again.
Mhm.
Because I always say to our clients as well, like, we might be your last lifeline. You may not get another chance.
Mhm.
So make this time the last time.
Absolutely. And that's one thing I personally go back to a lot with that as well, is a lot of the times when I'm speaking with people about recovery in general, because I mean, my primary thing at this point is to spread the message to outside places, you know, meet with hospitals, social work teams, you know, prosecutors, judges, whoever it may be, and just kind of share that message and talk to them. And it seems to be a lot more accepting nowadays, that people are understanding and seeing that recovery in general is not a linear process.
It's not.
You know, it very rarely, if ever, is someone that says, hey, this is what I want to stop doing.
One time,
Whether-
we're done.
Yeah, exactly. I'm doing it once and I'm done.
Yes, exactly.
You know, and you can even translate that to, it doesn't even necessarily have to involve drugs and alcohol.
Exactly.
You know, like there are plenty of other addictions out there. There's gambling,
Oh, yes.
sex,
Yep.
you know, that thing that you
Shopping.
hold in your
Yeah.
hand and
Oh,
stare
yes.
at
Oh,
for
yeah.
hours a day. That's one of my favorites to go back to, is
Yes.
it's like, a lot of the times when people talk about someone quitting drugs or alcohol, that's what I assimilate it to. I say, okay, if you think it's a choice and not an addiction, I want you to choose to not open TikTok ever again.
They can't.
And they
They can't.
because there's those hooks in there. But that's the thing, is with those, you know, social medias and things like that, they are designed as well to have the same chemical hooks once it comes to endorphins and everything involved in them as the drugs and alcohol stimulate in your brain as well.
Absolutely.
So it's really like 6 of one, half dozen of another. And people don't take the time to really fully look into that. But it's just interesting things to me once it comes to that. But the whole understanding that it's not a linear process and taking advantage of the time that individuals have. One thing that I always tell individuals when I'm speaking to them is, let's call a spade here. Let's say you show up and you go to a detox facility, and then you go to a residential inpatient, and then you go to an outpatient facility, and you spend a total of 120 days, and you get clean and sober. Under that understanding that you do that and get it all right, you will never in your entire life get another 90 or 120 days or wherever it is to just focus on yourself
Right. Right.
and just focus on your journey. Because once that's completed, if you're in such a rush to complete that, you're either A, possibly going to miss out on the enjoyment of that journey, or B, that's when life's going to come. And it's going to come full force. You're going to be having to pay bills. You're going to be having to transport yourself all over, do this, the X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Taking care of family, taking care of past issues, whatever it may be, legal. So while you have the opportunity to be in that bubble and just focus on yourself, why not make the most out of it? You know, I think about it sometimes from where I'm sitting today, and I say, you know what? It'd be pretty cool to just go for 2-3 months somewhere and just focus on myself and self-growth and be able to have the opportunity to become the next best version of myself. Why would I rush that process if it was available to me? And I mean, with that being said, can you think of a specific opportunity? Obviously, we shouldn't name names in a public forum, but a specific individual maybe that you have had the joy of seeing something like that within their journey that has further inspired you, and could you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. There's so many. Honestly, the clients are amazing, and having the opportunity to work with them is such a blessing. But there are a few. There's one guy who he's consistently showing up in a good mood, ready to work. Like, he is here to tackle himself. And I know that he has some serious stuff that's gone on in his life, being in and out of foster care, raised by a family that wasn't his. And it's amazing because I find that sometimes when I teach, he's very much focused on getting the lesson. And sometimes he'll be like, wow, or like, I'll see. And so it's been a joy. There are so many. There's another young lady who has graduated. She's gone all the way through. Super proud of her. She is incredibly brilliant. Like her energy is so bright and so touching, and she's such a star. And recently she came to me like just the other day, and she's like, oh, they want to move me. They want to move me. They want to move me to a different room. Like I'm not ready, and I just don't know. And something's going on with the roommate, and and then I saw her, I think it was yesterday, and I asked her, I was like, how's it going? Like, how'd the move go? She goes, you know what, it's the best thing ever. And it's just awesome because it's like her resilience is powerful. And I think that's one of the things that the clients need to embrace is this idea behind resilience, that like you're gonna get knocked down, you got to get back up. Things are going to not go according to plan. And you have to be okay with that. The reality is that we actually don't have control over anything. And I always tell the clients, when can we change other people? Do you know when? When they're in diapers. Okay? When they're in diapers. Okay? That is the only time we can change other people is when they're in diapers. So the thing that we need to focus on is changing ourselves. And the clients always laugh. And they always, I think
okay, you're right.
I think it helps them realize, like, okay, I have to change me. I have to change me. And another big one too is taking responsibility. Responsibility. Going back, you asked what is the thread that connects all of them. I think some of them, like getting to this place in their life where like, ooh, I need to take responsibility for my actions, for my decisions, for the things that I've been doing.
Yeah, it almost brings like a sense of pride.
Yeah.
With that as well, being able to stand up and
powerful.
Be who you are. And bear witness to the fact that people can change.
People can change.
If I can change, you can change, she can change, he can change.
Absolutely. Growth mindset.
Yeah. We change our clothes every day, so why can't we change ourselves every day?
Exactly.
Interesting. So with that too, like what are some, like I know you're really big on motivation and change, is that as well. So what are some practical steps that someone can take when they're starting to feel stuck?
I will say, number one, awareness. You have to have the awareness, right? So getting stuck and being aware that you're stuck, that's the first step. Because if you're not aware of it and you're just getting upset or you're getting angry or you're getting irritated and blaming other people, it's not going to help you get out of the space that you're in. So having the awareness that like I've created the situation or that I'm responsible for my life is the first step. But I think after that is making small increments towards change, like those small tiny steps. Taking the first step of being like, okay, I need to take responsibility. I have to stand up and stop blaming other people. It is not someone else's fault. It does not matter what has happened to me. It is not someone else's fault that I'm in the situation that I'm in. So the awareness, taking responsibility, making steps towards change, and realizing, I think ultimately the thing that we have to realize is that this is a lifelong journey. Even for someone like me who's been working on my mind for years, it is a lifelong journey to reprogram those neural pathways and start to think better thoughts. This is a lifetime of work, and that's okay. And that's okay. Because also recovery and addiction, getting through that is also a lifetime of work. Because it, at any point, especially let's say like for those who are like younger in their 20s, maybe their parents are still here, maybe their brothers and sisters are still here. They're not affected by certain things yet that could send them. And the reality is like, we're all gonna lose our parents. We're all gonna lose a sibling if we have one. Like death is a part of life. So knowing and learning how to handle some of the things that come up is super important. And I think that's one of the things that I really try to equip our clients with, is learning how to deal with things and learning how to communicate our emotions, our feelings, the things that we're experiencing, and not hiding those things. Because that's a huge step in this as well, is like emotional mastery.
Emotional intelligence and
Yeah.
recognition with that.
Yeah.
So do you feel like because I know you've done speaking events and things like that, and keynote events before you actually got into this field. Do you think that you've had to tailor your message any differently from any other speaking opportunities you had before, as opposed to what it's like now being in this demographic, or is it very similar?
You know, it's funny. I had a little laugh at that because I always tell the clients that they get the most authentic me, because I think that
And I think they appreciate that as well.
I think that I'm able to be really real with them. Sometimes I'm harsh with them. Sometimes I'm super soft with them. I think overall, I don't think that the message changes, but I do believe that they get a more authentic version of me, because I feel like they're not judging me.
Sure.
I feel like they're not judging me, and I'm not judging them either. So I think it's this space of mutual and reciprocal respect, integrity, and care and concern, because I know that they know that I care. They know that I care.
So I got a good one for you here.
Okay.
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 You might think about this one for a second, or you might just right off the top of your head.
Okay.
So what is the most powerful message that you hope to be able to deliver when speaking to people in recovery?
There are so many good
Yeah.
ones.
Yeah, it's tough.
There are so many good ones. I think.
Okay, take your time.
Yeah.
We're here for a while. We got all day.
We got all day. It's a great question. It's hard for me to say because there's just so many good
Right.
ones. I feel like one of the things that's really important to remember is that they're not alone. Is that they're not alone. They're not alone in this journey. They're not alone. And that's one of the things that actually I try to focus on sometimes when we do some of the work is we do this one activity, cross the line. And so I'll read off different things and I'll ask them to cross the line. And it's interesting when they start to see everybody cross the line over certain things, they feel less alone. And I think that's an important piece of this to remember, is that you're not alone. We're here to help. There are people here to help. There are people who genuinely care. And you don't have to do this alone.
Yeah.
There's a community and we're growing every day. We're growing every day. We have so many great other facilitators, therapists, case managers, counselors, everyone, like we're here, So just to know that they're not alone.
And that's what I think, that's from the saying, like, we recover comes from, is it's not, a singularity of a person that pushes these agendas forward or pushes them together for themselves. It's the old, I get by a little help from my friends.
Yeah, a problem shared is a problem cut.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to reach out. We have to reach out.
So just to backtrack a little bit on that, you had brought up I believe you said it was walk the line?
Yeah, cross the line.
Cross the line?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm more tiptoeing the line, I guess, myself, but cross the line, like, it sounds like that may be a very impactful type of activity, and I know you wouldn't have brought it up with that question if it wasn't.
Yeah.
For anybody listening right now, what does that activity look like?
So I usually put a piece of tape on the ground and all the clients stand on one side and I stand in the middle and I'll read something to them. So like, let's say we were talking about communication. So I would say, like, who in here has been verbally disrespected? Everybody cross the line.
Everybody crosses the line because we all feel like, I'm sure we all feel like at some point someone has verbally disrespected us. Okay, cross back over. Then I say something like, who in here feels like they could have communicated better through some of the things that they've experienced? Almost everybody crosses the line. And it helps them to feel less alone. I think that so often they have experienced situations where they reacted poorly, or someone's hurt them, or they've hurt someone else, and they feel like, oh gosh, I can't believe I did that. Oh my gosh, I can't believe that. This is my, was my reaction or my experience or whatever it was. And I think that realizing that so many people cross over the line with you, then they start to feel like, okay, I'm here in community. I'm in a safe space. And that's another thing a lot of the clients say to me, like, oh, this is a safe space.
Yeah, that's important.
It's super important. And that's something that I focus on, making sure that the clients know that this is a safe space. That the things we share in here don't go outside of here. That what you say here stays here, and that what you share is a place for you to release some of that.
No. So, I mean, with that as well, with it being a safe space, can you recount like an exact specific moment that your light bulb went off and you said, you know what, I'm making a difference here.
Oh.
I'm making a change here. Like, I know there's millions of them. They're not millions, but thousands of them at this point. You know what I mean? And it's like, I asked that as well because you're just now getting to the point where I had talked about, the program being, 90 days, 120 days, where you're starting to see these individuals that have completed the whole program. So you're starting to garner that understanding more and more now. And I'm just curious if there's ever like a moment that you're like, you know what, I did have a positive impact.
There are a lot, and that's what makes this so rewarding. But one of the female clients had said to me, she said, Miss Angela, and she was an older lady as well, which I thought was even funnier. She goes, Miss Angela, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. And it's just so sweet. And I also, I told you, I make grown men cry. That for me is powerful because watching these men who haven't had safe spaces, watching these men who haven't been able to maybe share some of the things that they're releasing, like share that, or also learn something. It's powerful. And I've had a lot of I had somebody as well recently reach out to me who is a client who's now into rehab with another facility and just said like, I have a different type of respect for you.
Sure.
I have a different type of respect for the woman that you are. And I just thought that was so incredibly powerful because I want to be an example for our clients. I want to be a role model. I want to be somebody who they can trust, someone who they can look up to, someone who they feel honored and seen by. And I feel like I'm doing that.
No, absolutely. I can attest to it. I have ears around with things. Yeah. With that too, then, like, what kind of advice would you give someone that wants to take the first steps towards sharing their journey to inspire others? Like, how have you gone about it?
That's great. Like I had said earlier, there's this sense of like, oh, I'm meant for more. I feel like when people have that, lean into it. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know where it comes from. We don't know all the ins and outs, but like leaning into it, whether it's sharing it with people who from high school, sharing it with people in your family, getting yourself out there. I think one big thing that shifted a lot for me was changing around my LinkedIn, changing around my Facebook, letting people know what I was doing, making them aware of like, this is the path that I'm taking now. And I'd appreciate your support on my journey. And it's interesting because even yesterday I ran into somebody that I've known from a while back and she was like, oh my gosh, you're here, that's awesome. And we were talking about just like the possibility of getting into schools and other places that need this kind of inspiration. And she was like, I know people, I know this person, I know that person. She's like, reach out to them. And, so
connections, networking, changing around socials, letting people know what you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Another good thing too that I think is really important, which I tried to start doing, but some things had happened, reaching out to local libraries. Our local libraries do want speakers.
Okay.
And they do want people like who will host workshops. So if there's something that someone like that feels like they have a valuable message to share, is reach out to the library, tell them you'd want to host. I know that with the library situation, like you can't like give them your email or your phone number or your contact, but just to be able to practice and get out there and get yourself in front of people who want to hear a message.
Oh, that's very cool. I never had any idea about that. I learned something new today.
Yeah.
So Angela, where do you see yourself growing within this field in the next few coming years, or even on your own path?
Oh, I will say this, wherever I go, whatever I do, Midwest can always call me in for a session because I know that it's powerful. I know that it helps the clients. But ultimately, I think, big things for me, like I would love to be on more stages, more panels, more podcasts, just helping, get the message of what it means to be a role model to people. I think in a sense, like we're all an inadvertent role model, even we may not realize it, but somebody somewhere is looking up to us. And, my big dream is to be interviewed by Oprah one day.
Okay. She's still doing interviews?
I don't know.
Is that still a show?
I hope so.
I haven't had any free time around 10 a.m. in the last 10 years, so I haven't. Is on at 10, 11, 12, something
sure.
like that maybe?
I'm not sure. But I've seen, she does the master class, and I've always felt like, I want to be there. I want to share.
Yeah.
I just want to help people.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, for me, I want people to realize that my message is here to help. I want to help elevate. That's what I always tell our clients as well. We have to elevate.
Yeah, and it's better to have Oprah Winfrey be, the role model as opposed to Jerry Springer.
Yeah.
So I thought might lead us down the wrong path on that, but we'll stick with Oprah on that one. So to anybody out there listening or watching with this podcast right now, if someone out here wanted to help support you, how would we go about doing that? Do you have a specific push that anybody that's listening to this?
Yeah. So on my Instagram, my coaching page is at the.angela.dawn.
Okay.
That's my coaching page. I have my website, which is www.theangeladawn.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, and one of the things that could help is just sharing the message that I'm here, that I'm willing to facilitate at companies.
Okay.
I'm able to talk, I'm able to share schools, anywhere that you think that may benefit from this message and the importance of becoming a role model or becoming someone who's inspirational, motivational, digging into that mindset work. If somebody wants that,
absolutely.
It's really important.
Have you begun to do any sort of individual coaching sessions or anything like that as well too? Okay.
Yes, I do.
Awesome.
I do.
That's super awesome. I really like being able to hear that. And I guess the one thing I want to close with this as well is just a question that I always have for a lot of people when we're ending the podcast is what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with today about embracing change and growth and working through that process in their own lives?
I think to be gentle with yourself, that it's a lifelong journey. It is a lifelong journey to change. It's a lifelong journey to grow. And it's incredibly important to know that it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. That's okay. It doesn't have to happen overnight because the real joy is on the journey. The real joy is on the journey. Take the time to enjoy the daily things that come up, even if it is something that sets you back or you feel like sets you back. Sometimes those setbacks can be some of the greatest stories in our lives.
Okay. Well, thank you very much,
Thank you,
Miss
Matt.
Angela Douglas, for coming on and being on the podcast with us today. To anybody tuning in, if you want to scroll back a little bit on the audio or the video, she did put all of her links on there as well and talk about those. So feel free to check that out. Another episode coming for you guys soon. Thank you very much for tuning in.